This is Steve Schmaltz, President of Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. And I'm going to call the meeting to order for tonight. It's 6:30 and this is the regular board meeting of the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. So Tori, can we do a roll call for attendance, please?
Manager Lowe,
Here.
Manager Anderson,
Here.
Manager Baki,
Here.
Manager Taves,
Here.
President Schmaltz.
Here. So everyone's present, which is good. Then let's move on to setting the meeting agenda. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda? We did have one addition. If you looked at an earlier agenda, we have it added 4D, which is a Clean Water Fund partnership decision we have to make and vote on tonight, and Emily will cover that for us. But are there any other changes that we have to make or additions?
Just, we can do this at the next meeting, but it has some budget impact potentially, so an update on the MRAP program and whether we want to continue.
Okay.
Those.
All right, thank you. You want next meeting, right?
Well, no, I think we want to have it here. It could have an impact on the budget, so we could wait and do that, but that was just settled this week. I'm on that subcommittee to find out how they do the dues.
Okay.
So why don't I do this? Why don't I just briefly tell folks about it and where we're at, where our dues will be at. And then we'll send out it's really just a chain of emails back and forth. And then I'll do a little maybe memo overview of what took place. That way they're prepared for next week. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
So would that be old business or new business?
Old business,
We'll make that,
MRAP dues.
yeah, 4E. Okay. Any other changes or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended by Manager Anderson.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Manager Taves. Troy, do you do a roll call vote, please?
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Schmaltz.
Aye, so the agenda's been approved. Moving on to new business, number A, fiscal year 25 Clean Water Fund grant applications.
Mute mine, okay. Mr. President, managers, so you see in the memo, staff, collaboration with our district engineer is proposing to submit two different grant applications to this round of the Clean Water Fund competitive grant cycle. So the first one is the Heath Avenue and sand filter. Board is, we've discussed that with the board quite a few times, so I think you're familiar with that. The other is something that we've been looking into, the board has discussed, and Manager Anderson brought it up. But this is Sunrise River Headwaters project targeting development. So there's another area called this Accelerated Implementation Grant, in which it would basically provide funding to the district to further evaluate, include some modeling and some other field work, et cetera, to look at other potential projects in there that would really feels like that would be a good fit in collaboration with the work that we're proposing on the H&H modeling. So if any questions, we can proceed to it.
Why don't we have a motion made and then we can have additional discussion if there's any?
I will make the motion to direct the district administrator, working with staff and coordinate with district engineers and others to develop and submit Clean Water Fund grant applications for 2025 that will benefit water resources within the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Do we have a second to that motion?
I will second that.
Thank you, Manager Taves. Any additional questions or comments?
Not on this one, but just, I want to just reiterate that there is funding through the agricultural department for urban areas now. And it has to do with stormwater particularly, so just, let's take a look at that too.
Which brings up a good question, since we don't have legal counsel here this evening, who is going to take the notes on the follow-up actions that we need?
Staff.
Can do that.
We'll collaborate, Emily and myself and Tori, we'll see if we can
Okay.
all,
So if she just had a request or a mention, that probably should be captured, so I don't know this sucks. Okay, all right,
right, as long as that's, yes. Agreed upon as board direction.
that one seems pretty logical. Yeah. So then, okay, then I think we have a second on that. Why don't we have no additional discussion or questions, and we'll just have a roll call vote, Tori, please.
Yep, Manager Lowe,
aye,
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Schmaltz.
Aye, okay, motion carries. So moving on then to the item, new business B, the biennial professional services RFP.
Mr. President, managers, every 2 years. The district is required by statute to solicit. For professional services, and typically these include legal, accounting, other technical services. And including district engineer. So we have a draft RFP there. I know there's been some questions on the accounting side. From some of the managers as to what we would want to potentially include. And right now, maybe what we do is just get this out, so we could start soliciting for those service or for those those proposals. And take further look at, some of those expenses, and because I do have a question as to why we have so much additional accounting charges above and beyond what the contract was
The
for.
contract was pretty clear, at least I know as far as the standard 8 pages we get each meeting.
Right. Mhm.
And so then anything above that, I don't know whether it's included or not, or how, I've got, Emily sent me the contract, but I haven't had a chance to read it, so I plan to do that tomorrow. And have some comments
I
back.
looked at it. Yeah, it's pretty basic. But they do state what the services are, and it's more than just the financial reports. It has to do with the bookkeeping side of things and making sure everything's coded in the right area. Most of that information comes from Emily. But then what I've been noticing though is that there's a lot of journal entries that have to be made, especially at year end. And that carries over typically into the first part of the new year, because they don't, they're just doing it in the end of the year, and they feel kind of like the lawyers do, a few months behind. So you're seeing kind of an aggregation of a couple of months coming in at one time.
So that was, those kinds of entries were not covered in the contract, then?
They're separate,
They're separate.
yeah.
So we should identify those, that's something we need, then we have to live with it, but if there's other things being done. We can either include it in the contract, so it gets, gets priced in next year, or we could try to eliminate it if we
Yeah.
can eliminate it.
It's
So,
a flat contract for 3 years though, that's hardly doable,
right,
but I think it's good we're looking into it, and what was the
Right.
basis for that? And I mean, there used to be an annual rider or wage increases and so on.
okay, any other discussion? Anything else we have to do tonight, Mike, on this?
No, just that, basically direct staff to proceed with the.
Okay.
submit-
Are there any questions from the board? I think we've all been through this at least once, if I recall. Okay, hearing none then, this is not an action items, so wait.
Yes.
Yes, it is an action item. We have to, there's a motion here. If someone would like to make that motion, please.
I will move to direct the administrator to publish and post solicitation for the 25-26 professional services.
Thank you, Manager Taves, and I'll second that motion. Any other questions or comments? If not, Tori, could you do the roll call vote?
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Schmaltz.
Aye, the motion carries. Moving on to old business, the Minnesota Watersheds Annual Conference.
Mr. President, managers, we've had this on the last couple of meetings for as resolutions, but then also I just wanted to check in with the board. I sent out the link. The conference is being held at a new location. So, and if you want staff to help make a reservation, because typically it's favorable to do so. You can always cancel them later on, but so if you have any thoughts about going, I guess communicate with Tori and she can help get that set up.
Okay, that's what I had the question, because there's no papers available or anything to look at, so if we sign up, we can cancel later on then, okay?
Yes,
Can we do that through Tori or, okay, because your letter said we should probably do it ourselves, but.
well, there's a form that, and then you have to, but I mean, I think we can fill it out on behalf of each manager, but I just wanted,
Right.
one, to get it on your radar for the
Yeah.
schedule, and then, but if you could complete that online form, then it sends you something, then we can make the reservation.
Grandview Lodge is a very nice place, I don't know if anybody's been up there, but it's.
I haven't been there.
It's very, very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot more walking with this one.
Yeah, there is,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm not sure how the meeting rooms are, but I know that the hotel and the conferences and the eating and the food is probably gonna be a lot better too, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the conference rooms, just from online, look really nice.
Very nice, yeah.
Any questions from the board on this? Any clarification questions or, so if you think you might be going, if for no other reason to look at Grandview. It's a nice vacation place if you're like to take your family somewhere really
Yeah.
nice and upscale. Okay, with that, then let's do just, well, that's it, we don't have to do any action on
Let me
this.
just add one thing. We did talk about this when I was still on the board and at the last summer meeting, they talked about it at quite some length at the administrator meeting. And one of the things they said is that there are townhomes that are closer to that convention center. And so rather than being in the main lodge, which is, that's the longest distance, it's probably better to look at those rooms available closer to the actual event center.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that saves a whole bunch of walking.
Are those part of Grandview or is independent?
It's part of, no, it's part of Grandview.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Tori, are you familiar with that? If you,
I think you can request special access to those, yeah.
okay,
It should be reserved. That's what they were talking about at the summer meeting here a couple months ago at the administrators meeting.
we could be walking through snow by
But absolutely, that's the whole point, and you're not gonna be in the main lodge all that much unless you wanna be there.
Yeah.
And then walk out in the
And that may
snow.
be a big disadvantage in December, so.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. So, yeah, if you would,
I definitely added.
you, yeah, I'll just be a week out from knee surgery, so I'm gonna need close accommodations.
Sleep in one of the conferences.
I'm getting a bionic knee in November.
Well, good luck.
Good.
Okay, any other questions on this? If not, we'll move on then to state of the watershed.
Mr. President, managers, just wanted to give the board an update. We have Adam here this evening. Kind of go over both the schedule, but then also just talk about invite lists and a few other things. So, Adam, let's go take it away, please.
Sure, Mr. President, managers, you had the kind of the update in your board packet. Not a ton has changed, except we got the ball still rolling. Invites went out last Friday. Media invites went out. We've got a handful, probably a dozen RSVPs already, so folks are getting them. The Lake Association email went out today with the invites in there as well. We're looking good at the Legion. Everything's kind of lined up there and booked. I don't know, is there questions? You saw in your board packet, there's kind of the invite schedule, when we're gonna promote stuff. This week is kind of when everything started rolling out. We've done the social media. I sent the press release to the papers today. It's a little bit of hurry up and wait, but we got a lot of the logistics already done. As far as the Watershed Champion Awards and the nominations, the forms went out to the staff already. Couple staff members had some folks in mind already, have turned that into me. I'll hit up a board member. So in the nominations committee, we'll have 3 citizen advisory committee members, a staff member, and then a board member that'll review those for the kind of the grading and decide who gets them. We'll need a board member, doesn't have to be decided tonight, but need a board member on that committee at some point. So pretty simple, straightforward. And again, a lot of the info is in your board packet. So if there's any questions, I can try to do my best to answer them now.
Manager Anderson has a question?
Yeah, well, first of all, did you get that additional list of the media outlets that I sent in? Yeah,
Manager Anderson, I did, and they went out today. The only one was Channel 9. It was like a email form. So I filled that one out and hope for the best on that one, but the rest of them all went out. Yep.
okay, good, good. And then you said that staff got a nomination sheet from you. Did you send those out to the board members too?
And there was a question about that, and I'll double check with the board now if the board wants to be included in that for the nominations, and if the citizen advisory board should also be included in that.
I say yes and yes.
These are nominations for us to nominate someone else.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Mhm.
And we should probably get those. I'm thinking of some Lake Association people that might be candidates.
Okay, I'll send those forms out to the full
Okay.
board and to the citizen advisory.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I just had a comment. I had mentioned, kind of in a passing comment to Adam that, are we going to try to get a lot of the, Lake Association members to attend? We're trying to get some additional exposure, and I just wanted to throw that out to the board. Right now, if we send it to the Lake Association, they may send that out to the other board members, they may not. We could make an effort where we actually ask them to have a special letter put together for the members to encourage them to come. We got that invitation that you sent out, which could be used also. But if we do that, we could get a lot more people coming in, and the cost could be a lot higher too. So it's a question. I don't know that, and looking at the agenda, you know, I would position it with the Lake Association members to come and learn a little bit more about what's happened in their lake. But we're not gonna have a lot of time to go over individual lakes to a certain extent.
But we're gonna have tables up where people
Yeah.
can come and we can have those tables set up for the independent sub-watersheds, which would cover everything.
So I
Yeah,
just wanted to throw that out, whether we wanna make a special effort to do that, or just do it and let it see what happens. We've got tables there too, for each of the areas, so.
I mean, it's a big enough event space, and, I mean, we're doing it to engage with the public, so, I mean, I guess.
Well, it takes the place of our public meeting that we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have newsletter by statute, you know, and some way that we are at least once a year communicating with the public.
Right.
So, you know, we had annual ones when the district was just starting. And it was pretty well attended, because people wanted to know what the district was doing and so on, and so it was at the VFW, you know, on Broadway, and they were pretty well attended, so. I think keeping that in mind, it's not just for specific groups, it's for everybody that's paying tax for the watershed, and explaining to them what it is that we do, what we've accomplished, and how that money is being spent that we get from them. So it's a good story, and people don't read the newspapers anymore, so it's really difficult to do it through that medium. The locals probably have a bigger readership, but not much, not like it used to be. So that's a good vehicle. We're required to have those by law. But social media, Adam, that's what I wanted to ask you. How are you reaching everyone through social media? Within our
President,
bounds.
Manager Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have it on the website. We'll have it under the events page there. Added to the events Facebook page today. We'll have constant updates or reminders on Facebook. And then the partners that we send it out to, we also encourage them to put it on their like social media, their Facebook, things like that.
And that's what our Comfort Lakes Association will be doing, is using that. Well, there's an email and then there's a notification process, and then our website will have a special site. And we also have Facebook. So Facebook is really pretty much the winner as far as the outlet that people see all the time. So we'll be doing that. We could encourage that. I think what Steve is saying is maybe encourage that through a special message to the lake associations to spread the word. And we could use their help on that.
President Schmaltz.
Yes, go ahead, Manager Baki.
Adam, have city council members been invited as well?
Manager
Yes, I have.
Baki. Yep. All the counties, and then all the city councils as well have been invited. And a couple of those folks are the ones that have responded already. So yeah, it's went out to all the counties, all the cities, a lot of the agency partners, a lot of our just general partners for projects, previous project landowners, and just kind of a whole host of folks. So yeah,
Adam, wasn't that list sent out to the board in order to add this additional people?
it was just sent to Manager Anderson and President Schmaltz were the two it
Okay,
was sent
so
out to.
the rest of the board members didn't see the list. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The subcommittee, I suppose. I think it should go out to all the managers. Because there's still time, if there's something that, or some entity that we have passed over in their opinion, we can always send out
I'll tell you, it's another good reason to keep, I kept that list, by the way. I've got a little folder with some key other papers that I like to reference, but that's a great contact list.
Right.
I mean, it's got everybody from the governor on there, down through the local city officials and so forth, so. And it's got all the media contacts, so if you had to reach somebody fairly quickly, you go to that list and you at least have an email and a phone number, at least an email. So I think I encourage the board managers to keep that list because it can be very helpful if you need to reach somebody.
And to add to it, if we did miss someone that they think
Right,
is
right, but
important.
it's a pretty long list, but yeah.
Well, it is, but
Yeah.
there's still time for input, I guess, is the objective.
So Adam, could we then send it to the other three managers so they have a copy of it? Okay.
Yep.
And
Can
maybe
do.
you wanna make a paper copy for them and just have them pick it up here because. Or whatever they want, they can do it, yeah. Any other questions or comments? I had one question, I think it might be helpful, we have three speakers, myself and welcoming, and then Manager Anderson covering the history. And then Mike and Blaine covering the projects, programs and progress. There could be some overlap there, so I'm suggesting maybe we should put together an outline for each area of what you would like us to cover, so we don't. We only got 10 minutes, it'd be the same if half of my stuff covers what Manager Anderson was gonna cover or so forth, you know what I'm saying? Otherwise you have to get up there and kind of think quickly on your feet, so maybe we could put some thoughts together on that to keep everybody focused in an area that's not overlapping.
Yep, we can do that.
And
And I
maybe
know,
we start with the projects first and find out what you're gonna cover, because I did want to cover some of the higher level overviews of some of the progress we made, but you're also covering progress, but. I suspect you'll get more into the 80-20 rule and Pareto principles and stuff like that too, or?
Well, right, so I mean, I think we already have framed up a presentation, so
Okay.
so, and we can get that out, but and then. I guess really maybe more is just how much time the board would like to see in each category. I mean, your opening remarks shouldn't take very long, I presume, and then.
Yeah, he's got 10 minutes, I'm not sure we need 10 minutes there, if you needed more time, I could probably do it in less, depending on what I have to cover. But
Right, but
I mean, okay,
we go.
You have how many? 15?
no, 10, and you have 10,
Yeah,
and they have 30.
I think another 5 for what Mike says about the process.
Right.
And 5 more minutes on the history would be important.
I had planned to cover it, to recognize some of the past members that were contributed from the beginning, do that as an introduction, and then recognize any guests, key guests that we have there, right?
Yeah,
And then maybe recognize some of the, like we did at the Bone Lake, some of the
Mhm.
high level accomplishments we've made.
well, that's what Mike does. I think
Well,
that's,
yeah, he-
don't you wanna do that, like, leave that for?
Yeah,
him
okay,
to
well,
talk about? Yeah.
Vince, and then,
Chris Love has his hand raised.
Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, President Schmaltz. I was just wondering if we have any plans on running any like boosted posts or paid ads through Facebook or any other social media.
Manager Loth, at this time, I wasn't planning on any boosted posts or paid ads. We could see how RSVPs are coming in, and we certainly could do a paid ad or a boost on Facebook if need be.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we can get this outlines worked out a little bit to make sure we're doing what we're doing. That's all I had. Any other questions or comments? Looks good, Adam, so.
I hope it's as good as the Bone Lake delisting party. That was great.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next topic, strategic planning.
So we have completed the grant application, the PRAP for Bowser for the strategic planning. And so, and then we have communicated with Cultivate Advisors. And just that, you know, we're really looking more or less for some input on process. So their thinking initially was that this was gonna be more of a interaction with staff, but obviously, I think the intent on our part was more with the board. But if it's an every other week piece, I'm not sure the full board wants to participate. So, you know, if there's maybe some sense of rotation or one dedicated person for that, or to have get so far and then have an update with the board, maybe like the check-in halfway through. Just kind of wanted to open up for discussion with the board. Process wise.
Comments from the board? Or suggestions or
Why is the
President
board-
Schmaltz,
Manager Baki? I'll get to that.
Yeah,
typically, strategic planning involves all the important party members who have impact on policy and operations. To have only one or two board members there is really kind of missing the point of building a collaborative entity that has input from all parties. That's kind of my thinking when we talk about strategic planning. And I understand we run into the problem of having a quorum when we get more than two of us together, but I think perhaps that's an important thing to consider is how can we get all parties to the table to have a discussion about where we're going. And we've also talked about office space as being a part of that. And that's really important that we're all providing some input into that process. So I guess my opinion is the more of us that can be involved, the better.
Okay, thank you, Manager Baki. Anyone else? Manager Anderson?
he said what I was going to say. I agree. I think it does have to include the board. And, you know, we have these short meetings at our regular meeting times, but this is a workshop opportunity because it's something that requires the informality of a workshop and not, or a special meeting, not the formality of a regular meeting.
Any other comments?
I would echo both of those. Strategic planning really requires all the shareholders and stakeholders to be involved in the process.
You know, I can recall from our earlier discussions over the last couple of years about this, is that there's a vast difference of opinion of what we're trying to, what this thing is gonna look like. I think some people see an elephant, some people see a giraffe, some people see a car, you know, so we need maybe to have some help from the outside in terms of what is this? What is this? I mean, why do we need this? We've been operating on a 10-year plan. So the question is, what are we trying to get to? And how would this be used and how it would help us in that operation? And maybe the consultant could help us. Maybe offer some suggestions on that point. And so we all maybe get a line of what we're trying to accomplish here. Otherwise, I think we're gonna be in a lot of different directions. Just as a thought, and maybe you want to react to that, but I think it'd be helpful to.
President,
Some of the plans have been we talked about having this only because we needed it to qualify for grants. For the larger type grants for the office building, et cetera. So if that's the purpose, fine, then we build one for that. If there's another reason we need it, I don't know that we need it to operate where we've got a 10-year plan and maybe we do, maybe there's some gaps there. And so maybe somebody could bring those ideas forward too. Which would be good because I think we need to drive some stakes in the ground here so we know what we're trying to shoot for.
President Schmaltz,
Go ahead, Manager Vaki.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. This is precisely why we need strategic planning. If we are all pulling in opposite directions, we're going nowhere. This is an opportunity for us to sit down at the table and share our ideas and develop some consensus and agreement as to where we need to go on many different topics. So that is the purpose of strategic planning, is to draw a common theme, organizational ideas that we can all agree to.
So if that's the case, then it would be very, very helpful if everybody that came to the first meeting, by everyone, I'm talking especially the board members, a sheet of paper with your thoughts and vision on it of what you think this should be. And specific as possible. And then we could see how they differ or how much similar they are and so forth. That's just a thought or a suggestion.
Chris has his hand raised again.
Chris, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, and it echoes Manager Baki, Manager Anderson, but three of us were not present for the 10-year plan. So I think having all board members present for this kind of additional strategic planning session is worthwhile. And I think if with the consultants engaged, they should help us make sure that we're productive during those sessions. It's not our job. That's what we're paying them for.
All right, the other thought I had was that might be helpful if they could show us a couple examples of strategic plans. Something that might be as short as one paragraph, or something that could be as long as, an electronic copy, you don't have to read it all, but if it's longer, you could look at something like that. Which might be more similar to our operating 10-year plan as opposed to just a one-page strategic plan. Just to give us a feel for what the different options might be.
Yeah, I guess I look at this more as an implementation strategic plan. By law, we have to have our 10-year plan laid out, and if we're gonna change things, we've provided a safety valve in the adaptive management philosophy, so that we don't have to go through those big processes unless it's really dramatic. So that gives us a edge up, but I think the problem that I've seen all along is it's more of the, we need a strategic direction on our implementation. By that, I mean, are we going to use consultants? Are we going to use staff? What kind of budget are we willing to provide over the next 10 years to accomplish these goals? Put some dollars on it. If we do it by staff, if we do it by consulting. And then are there grants available for these things? So it coalesces for me, the implementation of the projects that we've identified as water quality, water improvement projects.
Again, if the consultant has a series of questions that they feel a strategic plan should answer. Or something like that, that would help us direct our thinking.
Minnesota Watersheds just finished a strategic plan.
Well, something like that would be good to look at.
So that's online. That's online on their website.
What is it again?
MinnesotaWatersheds.org. It's MAUD. It's the old MAUD.
I'm just trying to get us something we can work from before we come to the meeting to get us. To bring some of our thoughts together rather quickly without taking a lot of time at the meeting. To bounce back and forth on different topics, so we can see how much line we're aligned and how much we're not, which is good or bad. But anything the consultant can do to help us, that would be helpful, I think. So when is this going to start, Mike?
Probably sometime in September,
Okay,
but, so we're just trying to coalesce a process here because. You know, sometimes we've presented things to the cities or talked to them and say, well, bring us something and then we'll react to it. So my thinking is that we want to at least inform them that we're planning to proceed with this. And then see how they, you know, if they respond in some, you know, like if they come back with like, well, let us know, we have things to provide. Cause that was the planning process for the watershed management plan. I'm trying to think of the example, and maybe Emily, you can help me, of where. You know, it was probably more of the technical stuff that we've said, that, you know, we're gonna do something and say, okay, well, the rules, for example, that was a good one. They say, well. You know, we're not gonna provide you input, we just wanna see what you're thinking.
Mhm.
So it's sort of the reverse. So we're just trying to work through that process.
well, again, the 10-year plan is rather cumbersome to drop on some of these desks. Especially when you're meeting for the first time, so maybe, so, and you were talking about more of an operational directional thing, so maybe something. Aligned with a 10-year plan, maybe outlining also our relationships and what roles of other people that we have to work with, especially since we're moving into a new space.
Mhm,
The flood and green space, there's a lot of uncertainty of who's gonna be involved in what.
mhm.
So maybe getting that on paper in a short format might get better participation from some of our partners, so.
Well, our partners participated in the study that we did with Houston Engineering. Which was kind of a strategic plan as well. Because what it pointed us to is what kind of staff is it going to take to implement the 10-year plan that we just completed? What kinds of needs were we going to have? That's where the building issue, you know, first really got its first conversation. So we have that strategic plan for, I think, a lot of what we're dealing with. That one could just be updated. But this one I see as what we've already talked about doing is we're educating 3 new board members. And by law, the focus has to be on our 10-year plan, what we've identified already. We're going to accomplish in this next 10-year period. So we've got, what, 8 years left on it? And so we have to look at those things and decide if that priority still exists. If it doesn't, then we have to change our 10-year plan, amend that. But again, I just want to go back to the point that we're in the process of doing all of our Greenway corridor, our flood prevention, and all of that, storage, all of those kinds of things, which takes us in a whole different direction. And so out of that process, I'm glad you put that 2023 in this one, this program update from August 8th, 2023, I think it was. Where we first discussed it, or July. I missed the first part of that meeting. I don't remember that slideshow at all. It's really good.
Yeah, I know, it's very
And so, I came in late to the meeting, but it was after that slideshow was presented and we were in a discussion piece. So shame on me for not looking at the attachments, but, that's really, I think, a foundation for what we've been talking about already. And it takes from the 10-year plan that exists. And now we're just talking about implementing, you know, I've been talking about, we've been doing all this study of all of these things, but where do we have it put together? Into a plan for all those areas with priorities taking us down, just like our sub-watershed diagnostic studies did. It took us down by priority project and priority order of what we had to do, how long it was going to take us to complete. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for this strategic plan to do for us, plus adding these bigger things that are coming around, which is the building. What are we going to do about the building? Now we have that new concept that was offered by our current owner of this building. Where they would purchase the land and they would build the building that we want. And we just, sign a long-term contract. So that changes the dynamics of what we might have to fund. And it take a lot of time and effort off of our shoulders. Because that's really exciting. We need time to explore that and see if the board agrees that that's a good direction to go. And if it does, then we put it in our strategic plan. So again, I don't think that we've been doing anything wrong. I think we're at a stage now where we have to just refocus, revisit that Houston engineering, but expand on it because, we've got the personnel issues pretty well laid out in that plan. I don't think that's changed all that much. But look and see if we want to do more of the outside consultant contracting, or if we want to keep building our staff. That's a question I had right from the beginning, which is going to be the best direction for the next 8 years. So I think this is all necessary. It just is something that I don't think we're going to have that much difference in our approach to what happens because we've got laws that we have to stay within, statutes that we have to stay within. But there could be redirections based on what we're learning, but
Right.
we have to rely on EOR. And I'll just say that from the beginning, before we start talking about the strategic planning, we have to see a combined report from EOR on all of these H&H modeling, the floodplain stuff, all of that put together into a meaningful document for us all. How all these parts fit together, how does it accomplish our Greenway corridor that we've established, that we wanted to do some years ago now. And that'll, I think, help, again, bring everything together and make it understandable for us and for the community. The workshops, are you gonna set them?
Excuse me?
Are you gonna set the workshops? I think, is everybody in agreement on workshops for this topic?
For the first meeting, you mean?
Yeah, it could be. You need to
Whatever
find
the
out what they
consultant
think.
thinks, to get us all together for the first meeting,
Okay, we'll reach back out and
see what the
talk to them. I think we'll also just inform all the partners that we're planning to proceed with this.
Is that posted open?
And yeah, I think
Mhm.
try to look at some of the other work that we're doing to see how it parallels and can be pulled in at the same time. Because the Houston study, just for the other managers, was done prior to us getting into the watershed management plan, so it's been a while, so, but it's
So
still,
that was
still
still
relevant.
relevant, that our. I'm gonna call it a license or charter,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? But if you think of an industrial strategic plan, for example, 3M, we put a lot of them together. You look at. Where you are today, situation else, where you are, what are your strengths and weaknesses, threats and opportunities. And then you look and you look to the future. And see, what's out there, where do we wanna go, where are the opportunities, what do we have to be defensive, where do we wanna be offensive?
Yeah,
And then lay out a plan that, how to get there then. So.
well, I think we've all worked with strategic plans before,
So-
all of us on the board, so, it's different. The difference is that you can't use that business in profit, in product kind of a thing. Our products are the projects and the programs that we're doing for a specific purpose. And that's to clean up the waters and provide clean lakes and river systems for everybody. That's our sole objective. And that's pretty much covered in that 10-year plan, as I said, but what's frustrating is that we have a lot of these big project works that we've been charged EOR with doing for us, but we haven't seen it in a comprehensive action plan. And that's one of the things that I think Mike's been talking to EOR about is when are we going to see the output of all of this work? The H&H modeling was supposed to give us that computer system where we could let these cities tap into that. And they could show in real time graphically the impact of different rain levels. And so if some developer wanted to develop in a particular area that maybe wasn't suited for that particular type of project, they could show them what the damage would be and how much they're going to have to put into the upside, the front side, to keep that water on site, because they're not gonna be able to dump it off site, not with our rules, which is the way it should be.
Okay, any other comments before we move on? Okay, thanks to everyone for their input. Mike, let's move on then to a 4D, which is Emily's area, the Clean Water Fund partnership loan topic that we have to vote on.
With this one, Mr. President, managers. Yes, the board had already talked about this earlier this year with the budget workshops, and so this is just kind of an administrative item of approving the resolution, which is a required element of applying for that loan, which we're calling Loan D, that additional 500,000 that's in the 2025 budget.
Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion. Where is it? Is it on page 1?
It's up on the screen if you can see
Oh,
it.
there we go. I'll move to adopt resolution 24-08-01, authorizing submittal of the Clean Water Partnership Loan D, as in David, application.
And I'll second that motion by Manager Anderson. Mike, do you want to say anything more about this, or Emily? No?
Nope, I think it's been covered.
Okay, so then any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay, Emily, could you, sorry, Troy, could you please do the roll call vote?
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Schmaltz.
Aye, okay, motion carries. Next item is 4E, the NREP program, and Manager Anderson's gonna give us a quick summary on that as well as specific to the dollars.
Yes, Emily, were you able to do those 2 slides?
Just a second.
Okay, good.
Agree.
Thank you. It's just a big chart with numbers. Well, I'll start into the background. For some years now, we have been very concerned about how the dues are drawn up within the MRAP organization. We are a very small watershed, as we all know. If you scroll up to the very top.
Oh, it's not gonna show it on this one,
It isn't?
just because.
Right over to Valley Branch.
I
And
think
then
you can move that far.
here's your arrow.
Um,
See where
Just
Valley
grab it.
Branch is?
Just grab it and pull it down.
Oh,
So this is a PowerPoint slide. I could share the Excel document if you think that'd be easier to navigate.
Yeah, I think that would be easier.
I'll teach you a new trick.
yeah.
One
That
moment, I'll
makes
share
more
that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emily.
Well, the bottom line is we have been trying to determine and get the answers to how the dues were structured, because it's very difficult. It has been difficult for us to understand why we are getting such a large chunk of the cost of the program. We're the 3rd highest supporter of that program dollar-wise, as you can see right up there. And it made no sense to us. And so we were really concerned about this. I had asked to be put on the committee for the area a couple of years ago. It took a year for us to actually get those dates and the invites from the organization. So anyway, we were coming into this looking at now with a new direction of our dues going up if the formulas stay the same. And that's pretty much the way it looks it's going to go. I think the one, go to the one on the left, again, at the bottom, Emily, since you're on Excel, you can pull it up. The first tab on the bottom of the page. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this kind of talks about the historical structure of the funding. And you can see that it involves a stepped process among the different organizations. Comfort Lake, Forest Lake, I said 3, we're number 4 actually. And that's what we're looking at having going forward if MRAP changes to a 3-person organization in a couple of years. We could be as high as almost $31,000. And looking at this year, on this structure, $25,000 dues obligation. If you go back to that second tab at the bottom. Okay, this is the way that the new funding is looking for us. And you can see up by the contribution by formula column M that's been highlighted. We're looking at almost $30,000 in dues. And we have, before some of you guys started, the new folks, we were talking about this imbalance. And what came out, I asked, how did this organization start? What was the genesis for this organization to even exist? And it was the MS4 regulations that had come out from the federal government for cities. And they were done and implemented in a stepped way so that the largest metropolitan areas were first in getting everything implemented. And what it meant basically is that figure out how to take care of your own water. They could not put water on another community nearby. And the urban ones get real complicated because they are so close. There's hardly any difference in boundaries within a very heavy impervious surface area. So it became very difficult. They had to work together. South Washington, as you can see, is the only one of the watershed districts that I know of that the folks on this committee knew of, that actually had an MS4 certificate or license of their own, because they do a lot of the stormwater management for that southern part of Washington County. That's where Woodbury is and all that growth that's been happening over the last 15 years, 20 years or so. So this in our conversations, like I said, the past several years has been that we've got to find a better way to equalize this. Rice Creek in the past was only paying around $3,000. I asked why that was, and as of this coming year, they're going to be using the same formula, and then their rate goes up to about 11,000 from about 3. But ours keeps building and building. The last one I want to show you right now is that last tab on the bottom. The current, yeah. Okay. This is adding a kind of a little piece of a suggestion that I made, which was to weight the annual budget for MRAP by entity type. And so by using a combination of what the foundation levy structure was and this weighting figure, we get to a $15,000 dues for us. It takes into account more of the area size instead of heavily weighted on the size of our market value. So if you look at those headers there, you'll see what they all mean. The tax capacity is over on the left, and what percentage of each entity does that represent to MRAP's whole. And so you can see that, you can see population numbers and all of that. They were looking at all of those different drivers. None of them are a basis amount to use for this type of dues. It's the usage. And if you go down to the bottom, look at all the cities on the bottom. There's quite a lot. We started out as an organization of 8 people, or 8 entities, I mean, all watersheds. I think Washington was in there at first, 2 county with some contributions. But these are all the folks that have have been growing the organization, so going from 8 to now providing services for 32 entities. And they're and the foundation of this organization again was MS4. And so if you look at that, our watershed is paying way, way too much. The other thing about us is that we had our own outreach person for quite some time, and she had other duties, so she wasn't 100% focused on that, but we are now with Adam. And so we're doing a lot of this work on our own. The value of MRAP, in my opinion, has been the seminars that they give, or these, outdoor activities that they give and so on. But we will still have access to that because we are a partner in the Lower St. Croix. So we don't need to be paying for this twice. Or 3 times, as Mike likes to say, or 4 times, because when you get a SWCD, even though their contribution is smaller, you also have the cities, and theirs are smaller too, but you still have input from all of these different layers of government. So we wanted to just, Mike and I talked about this, we wanted to just highlight this for you. You've got all this information now online, so you can download that and study it a little bit more. But the big decision for us is whether we continue to participate in MREP. And that's our decision for later this month, and include that 30, whatever it was 15,000, I think, on this redo. But this has not been, I want to point this out too. We were meeting earlier this week. And so people have been calling in with, what they want to do and how they want to maybe restructure this. The majority of the people calling in so far have been keep it the way it is and add that rider for the higher cost for bringing in a full-time second person. That would put us at that earlier highest rate of about 26,000.
Third person, I thought.
Pardon me?
That's the third person.
Well, no, they only have 1 full-time person because Barb is half-time, or Angie's half-time. Barb is half-time with the Lower St. Croix. She's a Lower St. Croix employee, or excuse me, expense, but managed by Washington County.
Okay.
Instead of setting up a whole new PR structure or personnel structure. Which makes sense, but the point is that we still have a way to tap into this because we've got the ultimate umbrella, which is our one watershed water plan structure. Okay, so if you've got questions, call me and we can talk through them, but just study this for a little bit so you understand it. And know also that we do have our own full-time person devoted to our outreach. So a lot of what we were using MREP for is not going to be needed. And that means that our outreach and our promotions that we do, marketing, advertising, whatever, can be handled by our own personnel or contracts.
So if Angie is now gone to half-time, have they replaced her?
No,
Well,
that's
then why is the budget going up then?
because what they want to do is have in 2025, 2 full-time people. Angie's probably not gonna be around there except just for consultation. So she may stay as just sort of a half-time overseer.
Is that a recent change? Because when I met with Jay in May, he was telling me they're both, him and Barbara are both going half-time. That's 1 FTE, and they're gonna hire a full-time replacement. And I thought that
Well,
was,
the full-time replacement is this new girl.
right, I thought that was already hired. So there's 2 FTE equivalents currently,
No.
but it's gonna
There's
change by
1.5 because Barbara is attached to the Lower St. Croix at halftime. Because she wanted to pull back from some of hers and
Right.
they're hiring a full-time agricultural focused
Right.
person, okay?
Right.
So that leaves Barbara with halftime, because she was doing a lot of that outreach with the
Mhm.
ag too, as far as the communications and stuff. And then Angie is back halftime. Because she's got other things that she's doing. She's writing books, and she's doing promotions, selling that book on the St. Croix and so forth. She wanted some personal time. And so that's how it's structured now. And so when they hire this extra person. Full-time, Angie's going to slowly back away from doing that work. Her goal is to actually do something in the same field but on her own. And then the third person would come on board in 2026. So that's why you see three FTEs and two FTEs.
So what is our budget in 2025? Do we know what that number is? Emily, do you know what that number is for NREP in 2025?
They're expecting this foundation to be part of the contract for 2025 for 3 years, 2025, 2026, 2027. So this is why we were looking at this so early on. They want to get the subcommittee to agree by majority. It's not gonna be 100% on the path forward for the structure. And then it goes to each of these individual 32 members. And they either say, no, I don't agree, or yes, I do agree. And once that's done, then they implement the new contract. So by the end of the year, when we are typically looking at these contracts every 3 years, we'll have it in November. But the lowest, if you look at whichever one they decide to go with, that first one was 26,000 on the second tab. The second tab, yeah. 29,000, I'm sorry, almost 30 right there. And then on the last tab, it's dropped down to 15. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, highlighted, it's 15,000, yeah. And there's an asterisk on that, I haven't looked at the asterisk, but that's obviously a footnote. It's explaining something. Can you?
I
pipe
added
down?
that to,
It's right in the center of the screen, current
there
revised
it is.
funding structure for counties.
Okay, there you go.
They would.
I just starred that figure because Jackie asked me to put a
Yeah.
star next to it.
Good. Yeah, good. Okay, that's it. So call me if you have any other questions, but this is something to noodle about over the next couple of weeks. And then on the last meeting of the month, we have to make a decision if we want to go forward or not.
So is the option either be in or out, in at 30 or out and nothing?
Well, if you're in, you're following the due structure
Right.
that everybody agrees to,
Okay.
or the majority. of
But
people.
nobody agrees with the 15,000 for us, so.
Well, that's a possibility.
Oh,
What I'm-
well, they can pick between the three options.
No, they cannot. Oh, you mean to vote?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. There's two options.
Okay.
There's two options. That's it. So what I'm saying is that this just took place in the beginning part of the week, of this week. And so far, there's only been about 4 people calling in and saying either one is okay with me, or the ones that are more definitive, of course, say keep it the way it was.
Any other questions? Mike?
Mr. President, managers, just a note for the other, board members that the district has tried to pull back from this a couple different times because of what we saw to be a disproportionate, other certain watershed districts were a third less than we were, even though they were comparable in demographics and everything else for a long time. And then that normally would draw the attention of Commissioner Miron and others. So just a heads up that this is not a new topic for the district.
And I made that clear at the subcommittee meeting, is that, we are not getting the focused information and outreach that we had wanted, and that's why we brought our own people on board. So we're not using, we don't need MRAP as much as we did when we first started, when they first started. It's been a good program. I have nothing bad to say about the program. But when you are growing an organization, a service organization like that, from 8 members that are, we were still not happy with the way that structure was when it was all watersheds. because it wasn't fair. And if you study that chart with all the breakouts of the total market value, the population, the acreage of the watersheds, you can just see that there is a disproportionate amount of that ending dollars coming on our shoulders. It's, it hasn't been fair for a long time. But look at it, because it's a whole board decision whether we want to continue being part of that and taking that money in one scenario, almost 30,000, and applying that to an organization that we don't really get that much out of for our own benefit. We would be better off putting that money towards hiring our own marketing firm, basically.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Moving on then to program project update.
Resident managers, let's see. Get those up there. I guess, we're still working on the closeout for the JD6 project. And the Moody Lake capstone pieces, those are moving along. And we're currently talking about getting some signage out there. For both of those projects, we'll have to work with the landowner there, maybe the township for the Moody Lake one, or the landowner to the south there that, where we did the project or something along that line, but depending on the discussion with the township. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the slides, but if you've had a chance to get out and look at the Moody Lake park improvements there too. I think it's worth a drive for the manager sometime. Take a look. Maybe Mr. Taves will host something out there, and we'll go walk behind the barn as well sometime and see how that project is beating up. Just maybe somewhat informally, but looks good. Obviously, the JD6 one you can see from the roadway as you drive by. So, but we're trying to work on the signage there because the sign is too small and grass is growing up, but also it was said in progress while we were doing the construction last winter.
Is
But
that
now,
Moody? Are you talking about still Moody?
no, the one on JD6, but both of them we're gonna try to do signage for, so.
Yeah,
And the Highway 61 one, so.
yeah, well, that's where the marketing firm would be helpful.
Sure.
Get signs out there the right way and the right, attractive signs that really tell the story.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up tonight. JD6, I just went by that today and you can't see it. You can read the first line maybe if you're lucky, but.
Right.
No.
Yes. Mhm. So,
So any questions on this?
I have one question. It's not here, but the land that we bought in Forest Lake, that big wetland area up on Third Lake, Cranberry Lake, whatever it's.
Yes,
whatever-
the
whatever-
North Shore Trail natural area.
Yes, whatever we're calling that.
Mhm.
We don't have any signage on that either.
Maybe have some smaller stuff out there, but yeah, I think that's another area where we have, it's on the to-do list, but I think there is some signage out there.
I didn't see any signage that said anything about Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. There was a sign, a small sign on the gate. There's a little drive-in area that has a
Mhm.
gate on it.
Mhm.
So there was a little sign about the size of my laptop here. And that's it. And I assumed, based on what I was looking at, that it was a hours sign, because there were just three lines and you can't read it from the road.
Okay,
There's no logo on it.
all right, we'll add that to our directions, yeah.
Okay, no other questions. Let's move on then the program update, the grant research and preparation.
President
Summary?
Andrews, yeah, Emily's got this one. Thanks, Emily.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President and managers. I prepared some slides. We uploaded these to the packet. But this program update, we're just continuing our series that we've been doing for the past couple of years. The board sees a lot of things going on with the district, but we've got a lot of programs doing a lot of work here. And so kind of the purpose of these program updates is to just highlight some of the work that's going on that staff is doing on the day-to-day level, just so you're aware. And so some of these things we've talked about in the past, obviously, the board is aware of the three big funding mechanisms that the district uses. Obviously, there is the levy, which we've been discussing. The district has been using the Clean Water Partnership Loan, which the fourth phase we are just about to embark on. And then this presentation in particular, I'll talk about grants and our grant research and preparation program. There's other potential funding and financing sources available to us, which are smaller, but no less important. We had talked about the permit fees and possibly restructuring to maximize that. Our Stormwater Impact Fund, which Jackie had highlighted in that dedicated funds outline. So for right now, we'll just focus on some grant seeking efforts. We presented this before as well, but just a recap of kind of the structure of the district. Obviously, the board is the decision-making body, decides the expense budget and the levy amount, authorizes grants above 40,000. So kind of that action earlier in the meeting to direct staff to apply for those larger grants. And then ultimately it is up to the board, and it's the board's responsibility to decide how much debt to take on and to look at those repayment schedules and to make those decisions with that long term in mind. Obviously, the district administrator reports and makes recommendations to the board, makes management decisions with the granted authorities, and delegates tasks to staff and consultants as needed from there. And then kind of the rest of us are kind of reporting up to the administrator, making recommendations, compiling that data, doing the reporting, all of that. And then kind of just on the small scale, day-to-day sort of decision-making to carry out that work that's been directed from the top down. And so grants, of course, are kind of different from the levy in that, they aren't unrestricted funding. Our levy, we can kind of use for general funds, for overhead and things like that. And grants, for the most part, are a contract to complete work that the granting agency wants to see. And so there's a set of eligibility criteria, and you have your work plan and your grant agreement, and you have to make sure that all of those dollars are going toward agreed upon things. And when we use our staff billing rate, we incorporate overhead into that, and that's a commonly used practice. But otherwise, direct costs for admin are typically not allowed. Same with regulatory requirements, are implementing our permitting program. Many programs, Bowser in particular does not fund water monitoring, but we have some inquiries out to the Pollution Control Agency regarding trying to get some funding for water monitoring. And then typically project maintenance is not allowed by grants. And the idea is that when you get a grant to construct the project, that operations and maintenance plan is part of what you as us as the grantee is agreeing to, is for the lifespan of that project, making sure that it gets the maintenance that it needs. Some foundations offer unrestricted funding, but typically that's geared toward nonprofits rather than government agencies with taxing authority. We've gone out for some of those grants in the past with these foundations. They're usually smaller dollar amounts, 10 or 20,000, but we haven't been successful so far. And then there's the match and in-kind requirements. Almost all grants require a minimum match. And so those are local dollars that the district is putting up, but if we can count that as the match, it's the key to getting the grants. And so it's still very valuable to be keeping in mind. And that in-kind time is a really common form of match. And we've done that in the past is, the staff acts on our timesheets, our time spent doing project development and things like that. And that counts toward that match for us, which is really valuable. And like I said, we calculate our billing rates with the Bowser calculator, and that includes some degree of overhead and administration. And then what we've done in the past, and I can recap an example of this at the end, but they do allow for you to cover your match component with another grant within certain restrictions. If you have a state grant, you can't use another state grant to cover your match, but you can use a federal grant. And so we have a diverse grant portfolio, and we have a few federal grants on our radar. And we are doing that overlapping where possible so that we can maximize the amount of work that we can do, but not supplanting local dollars. So just a recap of the grant goals from our watershed management plan. And so these goals were drafted with kind of these SMART criteria in mind, trying to make them specific to these grant seeking efforts, but without being so specific that they're prescriptive and restricting us to only certain programs. Measurable, we've got kind of these quantifiable components there. We really thought hard about trying to make them attainable or achievable. As far as winning those grants, we can go out for a lot, and the wider net we cast, we're probably going to have a lower success rate. But we had set these grants in mind with, at least equal to 25% of the district's levy, measuring that on a 3-year average. And then it's researching and applying to at least one new grant program each year. Obviously, the work must be relevant to the district's work, and then that time-based, that 3-year period or that annual period. And then the final goal has to do with the grant reporting. That's on different periods, sometimes annual, sometimes semi-annual. Each one is a little bit different and has to be tracked carefully to make sure we're in compliance, but we've got a pretty good system for doing that, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. So just to recap, for goal 1, the last 3 years, we've been achieving that goal. We've been really setting our sights high and trying to maximize those grant awards, and we've been really successful. Just in the last 3 years, the average has been 1.6 million of awarded grants. The average levy was 1.5, so just a little bit over. One thing that really kind of skews that average is we got our largest single grant ever in the form of a Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Grant in 2023. That was 1.9 million. I'll talk more about that later. I think that could be kind of a realm that the district gets into a little bit more, as these bigger grants that have a much longer lead time compared to the Clean Water Fund grants that we're used to, but the opportunity to get a lot larger dollar amounts and do some bigger scale kind of initiatives. And then as a result of all these grant funded projects, we've been able to achieve a 3,200 pound per year phosphorus reduction, plus sediment reductions, wetland restoration, some flood storage creation, groundwater protection, and wildlife habitat improvement. Multiple benefits have been achieved through these projects, and we couldn't have done them without the grants. So this slide, I went into the history a little bit. We have a pretty extensive inventory of all the district's past grants going back to the year 2010. And so I just decided to sort of count them up by year, and then marked a trend line there. So here on the left is just the dollars that were requested in pink. And when you don't see a pink line, we had obtained 100% of the funds requested. And you can see that pretty much happened when our grant seeking efforts were a little bit smaller. We were really successful, kind of going for those slam dunks, but then started casting a wider net and running into some where we weren't successful. So you see the grant dollars won is a little bit lower, but overall that increasing trend over time. So same with the number of grants. And there's some seasonal variation. One kind of big swing was that the DNR AIS grants have changed over time. It used to be that you would submit a single grant application per lake per species each year, and they kind of Some years they didn't even offer that. Other years they've sort of simplified it and restricted it a little bit more. There's variation, but overall, again, an increasing trend in the total number of unique grants applied to. And I mentioned that, you know, that big spike in 2023, we had actually requested 4.5 million for that Lessard Sams grant, and we received about a third or so of that, which is pretty common with those Lessard Sams grant. They go through the legislature in discussion with their committee, and a lot of them get trimmed down just because the requests are so much greater than the actual funds available. I like to highlight this one because when we talk about those successful grants, you know, this Clean Water Fund, the competitive grants, the Projects and Practices program, that's really the on the ground kind of projects. So that Heath Iron Enhanced Sand Filter is the one that we're going for. There's also the Accelerated Implementation Grants, which they haven't offered every year, but they brought back for this next year, which we're applying to. But just looking, again, kind of going back in the history, they published this information online, but looking at total dollars won just from this one specific program of the Clean Water Fund. The district has been very successful and the top award winner since 2014. And so that's kind of, we know that Projects and Practices is a good place to go. However, also over the years, the total available funding for that program has been getting lower and lower. It's sometimes in favor of the watershed-based implementation funding, and sometimes being cut in general per Jackie's item that she had brought up recently with that letter to the Clean Water Council. So a big topic of conversation, and it's a very important program for our watershed district. Just wanted to provide a little update and kind of overview on goal 2, the kind of wide net that we're trying to cast here and applying to at least one new grant program each year. We've been doing multiple new grant programs, some more successful than others. 5 new programs so far in 2024. I won't list all of them, but I mentioned kind of the bread and butter ones, the Clean Water Fund, Projects and Practices. We've also been really successful with the Conservation Partners Legacy, and that's through the DNR. That is a pass-through grant that the ultimate source is the same as the Lessard Sams, but it gets handed through the DNR, and it's a more expedited application process for us, but smaller dollar amounts. The new grant programs we've had success with, mentioned Lessard Sams. This can be something, you know, each program has different priorities. The Clean Water Fund Projects and Practices, water quality improvement, you know, phosphorus or sediment reductions is their #1 thing. And our district has been really good at finding projects that have really high measurable outcomes. And so that's been a real secret to our success there. Lessard Sams, they focus more on the wildlife habitat benefit and kind of the making these lands publicly available for hunting and fishing. And so it's kind of a different angle that you need to go through. You don't really lead with the water quality improvements, but that's certainly a secondary benefit to this. They, you know, their applications want you to quantify how many acres you're restoring and how that translates to habitat for the trumpeter swan or for rusty patch bumblebees, things like that. We've been really successful with the Green Corps, and this isn't really a dollar allocation so much as we get 1 FTE, we get an individual that comes to work for us. And so we'll be participating in our 2nd round. We'll get a Green Corps member assigned to us starting this September, and they'll go through next August. And we'll have them focusing probably primarily on shoreline restorations and the cost share program, assisting Aiden and Adam with that. New program was just awarded the PCA Local Climate Action, working through that grant contracting right now, and that'll help supplement our modeling efforts with EOR and this floodplain vulnerability assessment. And then the Midwest Glacial Lakes Partnership. This was a new one. It's had a pretty long lead time because it ultimately comes from a federal source. It is a little bit more time intensive dealing with those federal grants. And this one requires a 1-to-1 match. So we're receiving 60,000 in grant funds over a 3-year period from this grant. And we have to show a 60,000 match. And we can cover that match. Our staff is really good at tracking their time in the timesheets. And so we'll be covering that match with the staff time spent on shoreline program implementation. Like I kind of alluded to earlier, the nature of the grants may shift as new priorities come into focus. So yeah, tapping into more climate resiliency programs like the PCA. Bowser also has a flood hazard mitigation grant, which once we're a little bit further along with the project identification process, I think we'll hopefully be seeing some success with that one. We've been working really closely with our engineers. EOR has been a big aid to us in applying for the Clean Water Fund projects, kind of doing that technical component and getting those measurable outcomes quantified. Ann Wilkinson, as earlier noted, Dr. Wilkinson has experience with grant writing, particularly in the field of research. And so that's the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. That's that they really lead with kind of that research focus on things. And so our district isn't exactly a research entity. We're not publishing papers like a university would. A lot of universities and research entities apply to this program. That doesn't mean we're not eligible. And so we'll be working closely with the EOR to kind of get creative and find ways to apply for these funds in a way that it meets the granting agency's needs, but still stays on mission for us and isn't kind of going too far out into something else, doing the amount of research that we are able to do, but still really focusing on those on the ground benefits that is mission driven. Kind of talked about Lessard SAMs and lots of resiliency grant programs out there, which we'll be tapping into once we have more of those projects identified, which we're making really good progress on with this modeling effort. And we're really excited about kind of where this effort is going and finding the best possible projects to achieve the priorities that we're setting for this watershed. And then goal 3, kind of the less glamorous one, but very important is, the grant award is just the start. There is a lot of things that we need to do in order to actually receive and earn that revenue. And so it's a very important thing of just making sure that we are always in compliance with those grant requirements and staying on that work plan and eligibility and things like that. And we've got a good methodology for tracking expenses, reporting on accomplishments. Bowser's been really good to work with if we've needed grant extensions or amendments. And so, we've been achieving that goal of complying with that reporting requirements. And so this is my last slide. I talked about this one. We've certainly talked about this project a lot in the past, but it's just such a good example of kind of how things shift over time and kind of getting creative and adapting to things. This project, we originally thought it was going to cost $1 million less than it actually ended up costing. And so these grants take multiple years to plan out. There's a lot that went into it: design changes, unexpected on-site conditions, neighboring landowners, rising material costs, and then trying to maximize those benefits coming from the project. So within that final year of project construction, we were able to look at different programs and also have kind of that overlapping. We had a Clean Water Fund Projects and Practices grant that ended up not being enough. So we went to the Lower St. Croix and were luckily able to get additional grant funds to make this project possible. as well as using our federal Section 319 Small Watershed Focus Grant to help fund that project. And we were able to finance the remainder of that with the loan. And even though that project ended up being over budget, you know, the cost benefit was still really good. And we kept that in mind throughout the whole process. Yeah, that was just an example of kind of getting creative and trying to make things work in order to keep a project moving along, because, you know, you would hate for the reality to come to pass that you have your project ready to go, but you don't have the funding lined up. And so then you're not able to do that. And so, you know, we are planning our projects in phases in order to prepare for that, you know, doing that feasibility in advance. And we're doing that with the floodplain vulnerability assessment right now. We're able to get a grant to help fund the planning stage right now with the modeling. And then we'll go out for additional grants, and we could have some of those grant funds cover the additional design, the final design, the construction oversight, those EOR kind of costs, as well as obviously the contractor costs of installing the projects themselves. So kind of keeping that phased approach in mind, as Jackie has, you know, been noting. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Emily. Comments or questions from the board?
I'll make a comment. First of all, when I talked to I think his name was Paul, Emily knows his name right off the tip of her lips, of course, but I think his name was Paul. Isn't that the guy you work with at PCA, for the PCA loans, Emily?
There's
Contact
Kurt Sular or Chris Lundeen or Eric Alm.
I think it's Kurt. It's Kurt, so I wasn't even close. But anyway, he and I had a conversation about a year or so ago. I think I've brought this up before, but he had nothing but good things to say about Emily. They don't typically like to have multiple loans out with watershed districts because they don't handle the paperwork. She talked about the paperwork importance, and it really is. To have clear reports and understanding. And so they feel confident loaning our district the additional funds because they know we're going to manage them properly. So I just wanted to call that out for everybody to understand what a good job she's doing with that. Even, I think you're still using just your spreadsheets that you create. We don't really have a project application. But maybe we should be looking for one because it would make your life a lot easier, I think, to have all of that detail, you know, already, the ability to use it without that much work. But anyway, good job, Emily, and the PCA is always, I think, going to be a partner for us because of the good work we've done and particularly Emily has done in maintaining those records.
Good, thanks, Manager Anderson. Well done. Any other comments, questions? Yeah, I think Emily does a great job. We've got a strong historical record here. Things have been working very smoothly, and I think EOR is a key part of this also, as well as perhaps other people that we're not always seeing. So it's a good team effort, and it's really critical to the success of the watershed district and our ability to get things done on an accelerated basis. So again, thanks for all that effort. And it's good to have, this is a good document to keep. I think, again, it summarizes the key elements of what we're trying to maintain and move forward with. So good job in expanding your horizon on new grant areas also. So any other comments or thoughts? Okay, last item is a summary of board direction. Do we have much tonight? I don't think too much.
Yep, I think we've captured it. I know Emily's got some notes too. I don't know if we got them taped up, but one was looking at the MDA grants. There were several tests on the state of the watershed. I don't know if we want to call them out specifically. There was the signage piece. And then Emily did look up in the MREP budget dollar amount is $13,000 in 2025.
13,000?
So what we budgeted?
Right.
Yeah. So we're looking at doubling that. If they go with that one scenario, which I think they're,
Emily, were there other things, or Tori, on this? You have, what were the details on the state of the watershed pieces?
I just had note that townhomes are closer to the conference center, so we get
Oh, yeah.
those, and then set up a table for individual sub watersheds at the state of the watershed event.
Okay.
Oh, and did you say send the board the other invites,
Oh, the
the
nominations
oh, nomination list and
to CAC and the board.
that, and then, but also, they wanted the invite list for who was invited.
yes,
So you
To the full board. Okay.
yeah, to the full board. Mhm.
I can summarize that one. Staff will send the watershed champion nomination form to the board and CAC. We'll send the invite list to the board, the full board. Printed copies will be made available by request. So please speak now if you'd like a printed copy of that. Otherwise, it'll go out by email. And then Steve had asked that staff prepare an outline of talking points for Jackie and Steve. And so I think me and Adam and others can connect with Mike and prepare something of recommendation to the board or to
That
Jackie
would
and
be
Steve.
great, just so we don't fall over each other a little bit. So we don't have a lot of time, and so we gotta make use of every minute and not duplicate. So you should be fine.
I don't think you're gonna duplicate this.
Probably not. You might move into some other areas.
I know. I talk about history. That's my assignment.
Mhm. You are. the-
Thanks, Emily, good. Anything else? Any other comments to make tonight? For the board or? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That Manager Baki?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
I
Good.
always count to 3 before I do that, just to see if somebody else will jump in.
Sorry, can you
Keep
do
that-
the roll call vote?
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Schmaltz.
Aye. Okay, motion passes and we're adjourned. And thanks for a good meeting again.
Thank you.
Night.
Have a good weekend,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.